I'm not gonna really do much around the machine. I'll have some pictures I'll put off on the side, probably over here, over there, who knows? But what I'm talking about. The biggest thing is this is just a 10-hour review of my machine and some follow-up things that I think could help on questions that people have. First thing I have to be very, very, very serious about is the hydraulics on this. The hydraulics do not have a check valve and do not have a hydraulic fuse. Some people know what I'm talking about. Basically, in a nutshell, if the hydraulics goes ahead and let's say you rupture a line, that it knows and it stops it. It's kind of, that's what the fuse is. The lock system in there is not really, it's all, the valve is the lock. So what I'm talking about is, let's say that you got it all caged up. And what I mean caged up is that the arm is like this. If somebody gets in there with the engine off and they're monkeying with the controls, even with the blade, if they push the forward, the blade will go down. It's basically gravity pulling it back to earth. So just be mindful that these also will bleed down. So don't let anybody in here that doesn't know how to operate it play with it. And the second thing is be mindful that over time it will bleed down to a certain point. It happens. Now, with that being said, let's say you're out in the field and you are working on having to put your track back on. Well, if you've got to use the arm and you don't have no other way, leave it running. Do not shut it off, because over time that pressure will come back down and you could get crushed, severely hurt, injured, wounded, dead, who knows. I'm just putting that as safety because I got contacted a couple days ago. I've been on vacation for a week. Anyways, I got contacted a couple days ago by a gentleman that bought one in another county over, and he was asking me back and forth about hydraulics, and we were talking back and forth on things through Facebook. And then come to find out, he almost crushed his foot because he turned it off and he was up there readjusting his tension on his tracks. So I just wanted to share that with you. I know I'm kind of talking fast. It's not because of coffee. It's just I want to get this video done. And I've been wanting to do this video for a little bit, but I just ain't had the damn time. Now I'm getting the time on my last day of vacation until Christmas. Then I'll be off a week again. So anyways, that was just the biggest thing I wanted to make sure that everybody understood about the hydraulics. Now, cool thing behind that is, here's a benefit. If you go out in the woods and you're stuck and you need to pull your machine out, just pull the levers back to whichever direction the machine needs to go. So let's say you're gonna get pulled out of a ditch because the engine's not running, just pull them back. It'll release the lock, and then after a second, back and forth, it'll go ahead and it'll roll. The same with the swing, or the turret, as I like to call it. If you work it back and forth just a second, then all of a sudden you can freehand spin all the way around, so you don't have to start it up. The same as like if you want to just move your arms out a little bit, you know, just to do something, it can still do that. So that's the plus side of that. But like I said, it will still bleed down over time, so just be safe. Now, the other thing is with the hydraulics, people are having problems when they go ahead and they get them and they got them on their tractor and their trailer and they're ready to get it off. In my first video, I told you exactly what you might want to do, and that is make sure that you have extra hydraulic fluid sitting around and the AW, 64 or 46. Make sure you got that. Now, with that sight glass that's on the side, do not use that as a reference. Like I said, it's a cute toy. That's all it is. You know, it lets you know there's hydraulic fluid in there, but take the top off, depending on if you have, which model you have, if the tank's over here next to you or if the tank's in the floor. Take the tank cover off, look down, and make sure that there's hydraulic fluid coming into that screen. That's what you want. It's better to overflow it than it is to underflow it. And what I mean by that is, if you underflow, you can burn the pump up. Now, what I'm going to talk about for a second, I know you can barely see it, but the reason why people are having these problems is, okay, so you're in your cab. You got your tank right here. And this is primarily for the lower guys, so this is for the QH12s. But what happens is when you start going like this, your fluid used to be like this, and that's your supply line. Well, what happens now is your supply line's up here because of a little amount of fluid. And what has happened is you now are starving the pump, which means in essence you have no hydraulic pressure. So when you go ahead and look down inside, and even if it's going to, it's going to be wasted because you're going to drain it and replace it, just do it anyways because that'll help get you off the back of the tractor or off the trailer. If worse come to worse and you don't have fluid, then just remember to keep your tank and go backwards. Try to work it off as gradually as you can off the trailer. When you're going at the angle, that'll keep all the fluid right there at the inlet filter. Okay. There are people have done it. We've told them to swing 180 and come off backwards. I've done it on Facebook. I've done it on a couple other forums with people helping them little things here and there, just so that you understand. It's safety, so just kind of stick your arm out for a counterbalance to help you, because these are kind of teeter-tottery. That's a big safety thing. Now, another thing is there are 3 hydraulic filters in this machine. I know people are going to say bullshit. Well, I'm going to tell you. There's one where you pour it in. It's a little screen. Then you have the bottom one at the tank. Then you have your return one, that's the 10 micron or whatever micron sitting in the back. When you go ahead and you're going to go ahead and service this, drain it out, I recommend pulling the filler neck out. It's 6 screws or 6 bolts. Pull that whole assembly out, drain it out. But before you get to that point, measure and the machine's been operating okay, just measure and see how much you actually have in there. So that when you go ahead and you start to change the oil, at least you got a ballpark of how much is in there. Okay, usually 2 gallons is what I got out of mine. I didn't have to put any in, but I did bring it up to the screen, so it was roughly 2.5 gallons. But to do it, what you need to do is fully extend basically the arm out and the bucket. So basically, in a nutshell, what you need is your piston to lose all the chrome, pull the arms back into the cylinders, or the rods back into the cylinders where you don't see any more chrome, and go ahead and drop it all the way down to where no chrome is visual, and then drain it. That'll give you a better synopsis of how much fluid is really inside your machine. When you go back in, you're going to notice when you pull the drain plug that the drain plug has orange RTV. They love their orange RTV. And then you're going to look and you're going to notice at the bottom of the drain plug that there's a rubber O-ring. Well, that tells you right there that they didn't trust the O-ring that much to begin with. And the reason why is also these are very coarse threads. So they're not fine threads, they're coarse threads, meaning the gap is a little bit more. The best thing to do is go back and kind of RTV it again, or Permatex or whatever you want to use. Don't use something really like an epoxy base that's going to lock it up. Then you're going to be hating yourself for life. Now, when you go ahead and you let it drain, and like I said, take that filler neck out, you're going to look down inside and you're going to see this empty tank. But over here, you'll see that filter. It's just an inlet filter. It basically is making sure stuff is fairly clean before it goes out to the pump. Go ahead and get you a vac. And what I mean by vacuum, not your regular, don't use the vacuum in the house because you might get your ass in trouble, but use just a regular liquid vac and just clean around it. You can pull it off, you can reverse flush it, take hydraulic fluid, and then as you're pouring it in, pour it in from, instead of where the fluid's coming in, you reverse it. Now you pour the fluid and it kind of helps push it out. Anybody who has like best way to describe it would be like shop vacs. Okay, you reuse your shop vac canister filter. Well, instead of blowing inward from the outside, you blow outward. Well, it's the same premise. You just pour the fluid in and it helps push it out, and it really does work. You definitely want to do that because that'll help keep the flow going good, because there is a lot of crap in these tanks. There's water, there's dirt, there's plastic, there's steel, there's all kinds. I didn't film it because I really didn't think it was that big of a video, and I think I should have. And when I have to, I'll do it, but it's not that bad. Just remember, don't run the machine unless you got fluid in there, because if not, you burn the pumps up. Okay, back to handy dandy notebook. Okay, you're gonna have a couple things with the engine. Now, here's what I've ran into in the 10 hours. I was still getting gas in my crankcase. Even if I did the fuel shut off, I was still getting it. I couldn't understand why. Well, I started realizing something when I was operating it at idle for long periods of time, get out, check stuff, move stuff. My engine idle was a little bit higher. It was around 2400 to 2600 was my low end idle. Well, the low end idle for this machine is actually around 1600. So what I found was my idle screw is a little black button, picture will be over here. Anyways, I just brought it out, brought the RPMs down, and the machine actually can idle pretty good at about, I like to keep it around 1700 RPMs. Everybody's got their own little thing, but it's an easy throttle response when I decide to bring it up. But what I was noticing was I would get a real rich smell of gas, like basically like it was flooding, but it wasn't. The engine actually was running pretty good. But what I did is I let it sit for about 12 hours, went inside, did some stuff, pulled my oil out, and all of a sudden my oil was just pouring out. And I was like, what in the heck could this be? I did the fuel shut off and everything. What it was over time, the float and the pin, I can't remember. Anyways, the stop. There was a little bit of gunk setting up in here. I ended up dropping out the carburetor. Again, I'm sorry I didn't make a video of it, but there's enough of these that it's the same premise. You have a float that hangs there. The pin has a spring. It's kind of like a tension spring, so it keeps a constant tension when the float's up there. It doesn't kind of overstress the plastic, I guess. I personally don't like this setup. I think it's actually a POS in my book. I like the old school one where if it goes up and shuts off, it shuts off, not giving a little flex with a spring. But what I found out was also a couple of my jets were really nasty. I pulled the stem out, cleaned them, and everything's fine. But what was happening is I was still getting so much gas coming into the system that it was kind of coming out through the carb. I wasn't seeing it outside the carb and the intake. But what has happened is it was going down into the valves and going past, and it wasn't getting burned off. Plus also, I think there was another issue. I don't know exactly what it was, but that's the only way you can really get the gas to come in. So I cleaned it all up, haven't had a problem since. So if you decide to, if you've got a carb issue, you might want to look at that, or not a carb, so much of a carb issue. Well, if you do have a carb issue and it's running kind of erratic, go ahead and drop the bowl, clean it up, and put it back on. The second thing is if you're still getting gas in your crank, your carb's got an issue, and it's probably that float acting like crazy. Like I said, these things come in overseas, so that carb could have been full and then hot and cold, and I'm not going to get into that, but it's just something to look at. The spark plug, get that damn torch out of there. This is why I've now got a problem with the Briggs & Stratton. This is why I'm going to explain something to y'all. Every Briggs & Stratton I've ever purchased in the United States, I've never had a torch. Torch is one of the crappiest, worst spark plugs you can have. I'll put it right there with the other one that I did a review on about 6 years ago. I don't like it. They might last a little bit, but they're what I would call in a pinch. If you can't get one anywhere and you have one laying around, okay, great. But the thing is with this, I also was running kind of crappy. I noticed it ran really crappy. Well, I switched it out with an NGK. The number will be down here. Ever since I did that, it's been running great. So another thing is, yank that torch spark plug out. Now, the reason why I have the heartburn with this tells me that the engine is probably not built in the United States. This engine was probably built somewhere else. And the reason why I keep pointing is the machine's over there. Now, I'm not scolding the machine, but I'm just telling you that could be a Chinese Briggs & Stratton sitting in there. Some people are having problems with the registry, some people are not. I personally did not have a problem with the registry, registering my machine, but it's kind of odd seeing a torch spark plug in there unless at assembly they yank them out and they put torches in there. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't know, but get the spark plug out, replace it with a good one. Okay, and really no difference on running fuel. Definitely run non-ethanol. I've noticed that is my biggest difference. When I run ethanol, she kind of has a hiccup in the idle and it has a hiccup in the system. Since I've switched back out to finally finding a place where I got non-ethanol, it's been running actually quite smooth. You can put an ethanol additive in your gas if you want to eat the ethanol, but it's at your call. Track issue. Okay, a lot of people have recently started to notice that the nipple ends on their track guide, picture over here, are getting chewed up. Well, that's because of drawing looks like crap. I don't like it. So anyways, basically in a nutshell, you have your idler that sits right here, comes in, it's the wheel, okay? And you have your track that goes around it. Well, what has happened is the sleeve that holds the idler is a little bit too out. And you'll see in the pictures, what you need to do is go ahead and cut probably about a ½ inch in and a little bit of a rounded taper. And that'll keep, when you're doing side to side, that'll keep the track from getting ripped up. That's what's happening on those guide, the little, hell, I don't know what the name is. I don't do this for a living, but it's what's chewed them up, and you'll see the pictures. Anyways, just kind of, if you can, pop your track, grind it off, kind of, like I said, probably about a ½ inch on each side, and probably about a ½ inch back. So just instead of having like a nice sharp 90, kind of make it a nice decent 45, so that now it'll sit like this. Instead of being like this, it'll have a little bit better room. That's another thing I help people out. My tracks, I have to replace. Mine are delambing. The vulcanization process on mine failed, so my tracks are basically separating. That's a common other issue that a lot of people are having that have been riding around on these, is that where the seam is literally tearing apart. It's probably because of bad vulcanization and just the stress, and also another thing is the tension from factory, because some of these people have never touched them and they just snapped them right off. So that's another thing to be mindful of. I'll show you a little picture what mine was doing, and it's still on there. I'm still using it. I'm going to basically use it until it completely comes apart. Then I'll put the new tracks. My tracks I got replaced were under warranty. AGT was nice enough to send me some new sets of tracks, because I sent them the pictures, showed them exactly what it was, showed them what was causing it, showed them everything else, and they were right. Not a problem. At first it was like, what can we do? You know, just send me tracks. Well, let us get with somebody. They finally got back within about 6-7 hours. Poof, I got notification, tracking number, and tracks were on their way out of China. Now, with that all being said, so far, like I said, I really like the machine. She's a stout little tank. She does really good. Haven't had any problems. It's a learning experience. Just remember a couple things. When you're going through terrain, let's say you're going in the back 40 of somewhere you normally just walking on through and no problems, and you have little potholes, this thing's gonna find them. Because, like I said, the track, it all depends on how much weight's here and how much weight's here, and it's gonna get a teeter effect. And let's say you only got maybe like a 6-inch step down, that 6-inch step down is gonna give you a pucker factor, and your ass is gonna suck that seat up real fast, because you're gonna be like, whoa, it didn't seem that bad, but it's amplified while sitting in the machine. So when you're out, go walk the area that you're gonna go so that you don't have really any surprises. That's the one thing that really can help a lot of people out, is the surprise factor of when you're doing the, because you can see a flat surface, oh yeah, no problem, but then all of a sudden there's like a little dip or something, you're like, oh, that's nothing. It's amplified in this. It's not like a big Traco or something that can, you know, right over it. I mean, all you need is a couple inches, and all of a sudden you're feeling, woo, you know. So that was one major thing that you might want to be looking at. Now, some things that are starting to really, one thing that's showing its head, and I fixed it, and I'll do a walk around video of what I did with it. But what I had was one of my cylinders had a nick in it. Don't know where it came from, but it's there. I took basically metal set JB Weld Just went in there, plugged it, smoothed it, sanded it, cleaned it up. If I get a chance, I'll throw it at the end of this video, but I highly doubt it. So if you have cylinder problems, like if you're finding little nicks and stuff, don't worry about it. Just clean them up a little bit, fill them up. There's a couple videos out there. I'm not really going to steal from them guys. There's one under cylinder repairs. Guy looks like a cat, attacked his, went in, smoothed it up, and did some metal set in there, and it looks fine. But what I will say is for your cylinders, if you're like with mine's parked in the garage, or it's going to be parked in the shed or something where it's going to be protected by the elements. But if not, take WD-40 and spray the chrome. And the reason why is, one, and spray it when you're done using it, but then when you go ahead and you're getting ready to use it, wipe it off so that any dirt and anything else collects doesn't get caught in the first stage seal and start tearing the seals up. But that'll help, because these things do rust bad. They are not like your typical chromoly chrome. There's something really funny about this stuff. It's cheap Chinese, I know, but I'm just telling you in general. Other than that, been running my fans. I don't need an oil cooler. I really don't see why this needs an oil cooler. With running the two fans, mine are both inductions and going out the back, I haven't had any problems. Plus I set with their with a temperature probe now that I put in there. The canopy, or not the canopy, but the actual engine housing, with air flowing in, on the hottest day I did it was like 96 degrees. Inside the engine house was roughly about 165 where I put it. On a cold day, it went to 100. It was 45 degrees out a couple days ago, and I brought it out just to go out and play in the backyard for a minute. It brought it down to right around, I think, 110. So that's not bad. That keeps it. But like I said, those are running dual fans. Both of them are bringing in. Some people have fans coming in this way and out that way. To me, that's okay. It's your machine. I personally wouldn't do it, because you're not really, to me, you're just blowing over and exhausting out the same air. So you're not really getting the air back here by the exhaust. That's just my 2 cents. But like I said, I'm not going to downplay anybody's ideas. You know, everybody's got great ideas. This is kind of like a new toy for everybody. I do have the hinges on there. That makes a big difference. Now I don't have to worry about them crazy bolts like I told you in the first video. The claw's been doing really good. Just been staying on top of loops. No loose bolts, no loose hardware. Oh, your turret pump. Again, people are still having problems with their turret pumps or the swing pumps or swing motors. Do exactly like I've told you. Go ahead, pull those 4 bolts out, pull it up, take a look at it. Make sure that that thing's tight at the bottom that holds the gear so that it swings. Make sure that that's Loctited and tight, and then put your 4 bolts back in with blue Loctite and you'll be fine. You probably won't have any more problems. The reason why is because of the way they just slam this damn thing together. They didn't use Loctite on that, and they use a lock washer, but lock washers do good and they do have a flaw. So anyway, this is Trav. As usual, y'all have a great and safe day, and thank you for watching. If you have any questions or concerns or anything, feel free to put them down in the comments.